Welcome, everyone, to the Breaking News with Breakaway USA, your pivotal source for the most compelling and urgent news stories of the week. I'm your host, Fabian Garcia, and alongside of me, of course, we have Mr. David Kate and Mr. Kevin Phares. And each week, we dive deep into the heart of the news that matters, bringing you detailed rundown, critical analysis, and our unique perspective on what's shaping our world. Today, we're tackling topics that everyone is talking about, including the CIA admitted that they had agents hidden in the crowd during January 6th. And OJ Simpson, the juice, has died. Israel is on the brink of war with Iran. We're going to talk about that and a number of other things. And remember, if you find these discussions enlightening and our insights valuable, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. It really helps people find us. So buckle up as we dive into this week's pressing stories right here on Breaking News with Breakaway USA. What's up, guys? How are you?
Super excited to talk about this just loaded show. So excited. We have an eventful show today with so many different topics to discuss.
It has been quite the day, quite the week, and man, honestly, we're learning a lot of things we already knew. But I'm excited for the OJ story. But let's get on into it, Fabian.
Yeah, I think the first story we're going to talk about is the CIA actually admitting that they had agents hidden in the January 6th crowd. And we have a video that we're going to show you quickly. Check this out.
Additionally, O'Bleness states that he knows and works with FBI agents who were undercover in the January 6th Capitol riot, estimating about 20 field agents were there undercover. While O'Bleness notes that they were not involved in violence, this appears to be the first admission of undercover FBI agents in attendance.
I thought you said that there were FBI agents in the crowd at J6.
There always are when there's a big protest in D.C. Just in case it gets out of hand like that.
There
wasn't enough to turn that tide. I mean, I'm talking they maybe have it 20. You needed 1,000 to get rid of that crowd.
So they had that was just 20?
Yeah, just to go through and observe and see what they can hear, that kind of thing.
Wow. Definitely. They needed 1,000 at least.
Well,
Wow.
see, that's also Capitol Police jurisdiction. They're in charge.
So
Why they didn't have more on hand, I don't know.
The Bureau didn't really want people knowing that they were in the crowd.
Mm-hmm.
Because that would be overstepping their bounds.
A little bit.
Do people know that?
Why?
Did people know that the Bureau was in the crowd?
Nope, and probably never will.
You know agents that were there?
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Yeah, they work for the agency now.
Shocking, but I wouldn't say too shocking, right, fellas? I mean, we finally have the CIA admitting to us, well, perhaps this isn't exactly the CIA itself, but it's an agent of the CIA and a contractor of the CIA finally admitting to us something that we've known all along, that they have different tactics to how they take out their political enemies, if I would call them enemies. And then they know also how to embed themselves in certain operations so they can entrap individuals and cause certain things to happen. So I just want to briefly read this headline story that I have. So that was Gavin what was his name? Let's say O'Bleness. So O'Bleness, and he actually admitted that over 20 undercover FBI agents were embedded on the January 6th event. And something that we've known for a while now, because every time somebody comes and testifies in front of Congress and they get asked, were FBI agents present during January 6th, they always come short of admitting it, but they never deny it as well. I just want to read a little bit about this real quickly. Inside the entire event, he actually said that, he was asked, do people know that the FBI was involved or they were undercover agents? And he said, no. And I don't believe that they will actually ever know. The public will never actually know about this. I actually also want to add in here that they went after Alex Jones. And what they did, perhaps you may not agree with Alex Jones, but this is pretty scary to think about, that the government waged a war on an individual that they simply disagree with. They went after him, and their biggest mission was to essentially make him broke, charge him with as much money as they possibly can, which I would say that they successfully have. So, fellas, what do you think about this when you have the government going after individuals, saying that they are embedded in certain events like January 6th? What do y'all think?
From what I see, and this is scary. So we've always heard that the Chinese have infiltrated, the Russians have infiltrated the U.S. government officials back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and even now. But to see this happen so often with James O'Keefe being the primary person, that him and his investigators, and you have other people who are now being copycats, thankfully, and doing their own investigations, and you're having these top level government officials spill the beans on all of these clandestine and classified things. It tells me that all those books I read growing up, where the Russians and the Chinese had some guy and they put a hidden microphone, like, it wasn't that hard. I had a much higher level of respect for people who work for the embassies and the government, because what I'm seeing now, I mean, this is an absolute disgrace. In this video, he says himself, I don't know if I should talk about these things because it's classified. So he didn't do it on accident. He did it on purpose. And he's still, because he wanted to get laid, he kept telling stories about it.
Is that really how they got it? Is it was like through like a dating app or something?
Yep.
Absolutely.
Summer Grinder, like the gay ones that
So
the gay guys.
wait. So they get gay. Oh my God! Don't be gay, everybody. You'll get found out by Project Veritas. I guess that should be their new slogan. No, when I hear this though, if you saw me laughing, it was because I just love the when they get on tape, the guy going, and nobody knows this, and they probably never will. I love when they say that because it's like on tape and then it's released, and now everybody, at least who sees that video, will now know. But it's once again another thing where, like you said, David, we already knew this. Like, we already knew that the government was in some way involved. I think the biggest question I would want to ask, and this is just, and this is might even make some people like, I never thought to ask that, and you might not be happy that I'm asking this, but I wonder if anybody was ever involved in anything that happened in 2020, all those race riots and everything that stoked so much. And so here's what I'm thinking, right? Okay, so the government involves themselves in things like this. He says that it's not just January 6th, it's in things like this. If we are led to believe and stoke more and more racial division and more racial fear, and that's exactly what the riots did, the BLM riots of 2020 did, then that might push people to vote a certain way. Now, there's some people that would be more likely to vote for Trump because it's, oh my gosh, look at all the BLM people. That's Joe Biden. Or there's others that might say, well, this is what's happening currently in Trump's America. We need something different. And while it was Joe Biden's supporters, or at least seemingly Joe Biden's supporters, who caused all that damage in 2020, maybe it was the FBI, maybe it was the CIA. See, conservatives are conspiratorial enough, and I put that in quotes on purpose, and I hope you guys can understand why, but we're conspiratorial enough to ask that question, maybe the government was in some way involved, since the day it happened. But when did the left ever do that for 2020? They never did, which in reality, maybe they should have, because maybe they're not as much to blame, and the government was a lot more involved than we thought.
That's an actually interesting point that you bring out, because we know that the damages were in the billions. The amount of police officers that were hurt were, I believe, close to 100 or so. I know police officers died as well during those BLM Summer Love riots that they were having. And that's actually an interesting aspect, because I think that us conservatives should be actually questioning that as well, thinking to ourselves, well, perhaps did the FBI or the CIA or anybody really embed themselves in the Summer Love riots to cause more fear and to essentially perhaps, right? Because we know that actually hurt President Trump more than it did good for him. So perhaps his war with the intelligence community extends to these operations, which include the Summer Love riots. That's actually an interesting point, Kev. And just a quick funny note. Yes, he was found through Grindr. And I think it's hilarious that we've seen one after another individual that's being exposed through Project Veritas or something similar, some undercover journalism, is gay. And when I told my friend about this story, he couldn't believe it. He's like, this dude is saying this on the first date. He's really trying to get laid. And I thought that was the most hilarious thing. I mean, think about this. I mean, average Americans, my friend doesn't really pay attention to politics that much. And he found that to be absolutely hilarious. He's like, this dude is giving up all this information on the first date. It just shows you really like the useful idiots that we're working here with.
There's a great saying that I'm thinking about that I read not too long ago, and it goes along these lines. It says, so you mean to tell me that the CIA did really bad things in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and 2010s, and nothing changed, but now they don't do it anymore? Like, come on, give me a break. Like, no one was ever castigated. Nobody was ever charged with anything. And all of a sudden they're not doing it because why? Because you don't believe that it's real. I mean, it's right there. That guy works for the CIA. Took down his LinkedIn as soon as right after they exposed him, but they have the original one before he deleted it. And it's just, I mean, the level of idiots that are in this government running the government at the highest levels should make you extremely, extremely scared. And you know what's sad is that we've been conditioned through the media to see these politicians as something as grandeur, as someone who has like this insight into something that us laymen can never get. Most of them are absolute bumbling bozos and idiots. So I'm saying that because I've met many, and I know you, Kevin, and David, you have as well. It makes me sad. So when you meet a good person who's in politics, you're like, wow, why can't I clone you to be 100 of you?
No, absolutely. Well, and even like not just the CIA. The CIA is one of them, but the FBI too. And you brought up the idea of, oh my gosh, like people now think that all of a sudden the CIA is all great, but in the past they've done bad things. Look at the FBI. J. Edgar Hoover, the person who has been claimed to basically have founded the FBI or has been was instrumental in the creation of the FBI, was found to have was charged with enforcing and collecting evidence using illegal surveillance, wiretapping, and burglaries. Like, even the founder of the FBI was doing things that were against their own ethics codes. So it's a great thing, and this is kind of off on a little bit of a tangent, but it's a great thing that our government actually struck down the FISA courts, which is just another example of how the government overextends its power to try to assert its own dominance over the will of the people.
We were pretty close to letting that FISA bill go through, actually, until us as people applied some pressure on the House to essentially block that. But one thing that I just want to mention is that you guys were talking about that people think that suddenly 2010 the CIA stopped doing these things, but in 2015 is when President Trump came out and waged war against the intelligence community for essentially going against all of our rights. And so it's really, I think, there's no way that you can sit there and believe that the CIA suddenly stopped doing their activities and their operations that they were doing before to go after political opponents and after political movements, essentially, that may cause a threat to them. Guys, any last thoughts before we move on?
Yeah, I wanted to say that if you're watching us and you want to know more about this story, you can learn more about it and more in our exclusive Telegram group. It's called Uncensored News. And basically, what we've done is that we've taken all these stories that we can't put on social media because we'll get shadow banned again, like we have been in the past, and I am right now. But you get a front row seat to news that matters. So if you want to get that news, then go to our Telegram. It's t.me/breakaway. Because we post things all the time there. And if you haven't gone in, make sure you're in there with us.
Absolutely. And one thing I'll say before we go to commercial break for a second is that I'm about to dump the Instagram live button. So if you want to go see this live and continue seeing it, go on Rumble, go on YouTube. You can find us at Breakaway USA. You can go to any link, essentially. You can go to the link in our profile and you'll find our live stream. But we're dumping this Instagram live right now as we go into commercial break.
Guys, before we dive back into our discussion, I want to take a moment and talk about something that's not just refreshing, but also aligns with what we stand for, which is the freedom to think, speak, and act freely. And that's why we're thrilled to have Freedom 2.0 as our sponsor. So Freedom 2.0, you might have heard of us talk about it before, but it's not just another water company. They're actually a movement, and they unapologetically fight for freedom of speech while ensuring that you stay hydrated with some of the purest water out there. And I really do mean that. It's really damn good. They have this super unique filtration process, which includes reverse osmosis, O3 ozonated infusion, and ultraviolet water filtration, which removes the impurities without having a bunch of unnecessary chemicals. So it tastes really damn good. Plus, instead of your money going to sex changes like when you buy other companies' products, Freedom 2.0 actually helps creators like us create more content for you. So please go support them and opt for a healthier hydration water for a satisfying experience. If you believe in making choices that reflect your values, then join us in supporting Freedom 2.0. Remember their mantra, it's speak free, think free, and act free. So check out freedom20.com and use the code breakaway for 15% off your order. Let's go.
Absolutely. And the thing is we got to transition from talking about water to the juice. The juice, everybody, is no longer loose. The Bronco, it's out of gas, and we can finally figure out whether or not the glove fits. However, some people might find that a little offensive if you try to shove it on in the casket or something. But former NFL running back Orenthal James Simpson, better known as OJ, the juice. He has died at the age of 76 after a battle with cancer, and his family announced this Thursday on social media. An ex post on his official account said, quote, on April 10th, today, our father, Orenthal James Simpson, succumbed to his battle with cancer. He was surrounded by his children and grandchildren. During this time of transition, his family asks that you please respect their wishes for privacy and grace. Simpson, as I mentioned, was 76 at the time of his death and achieved national fame after becoming a college football star and later playing for the NFL for 11 seasons, mostly with the Buffalo Bills out of New York. He is considered to be one of the greatest running backs in franchise history. Now, he is also very well known for being a murderer. He murdered his girl or his ex-wife, I believe, or maybe, ex-wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, and her boyfriend at the time, Ron Goldman, in 1994, and the pair were found stabbed to death outside the house in the condo in Brentwood. Simpson was arrested and charged with murder, but was later acquitted following a high-profile trial, many of which blame race as the major issue in this. Simpson is survived by 4 grandchildren from 2 marriages, including Sydney and Justin, who he shared with Nicole Brown. One of the Simpsons' sons from his first marriage drowned in 1979, which I just thought was an interesting thing to point out. Now, here's the thing, and I want to get your guys' thoughts on OJ, his life, and everything, but it's important to recognize that even in death, OJ Simpson is controversial, with many celebrating his death, like Caitlyn Jenner, Bruce Jenner, who posted to X, quote, good riddance. But I guess no one told Caitlyn that OJ's famous moment in a car didn't end with fatalities. So I don't know if you guys know, Caitlyn Jenner was in a fatal car crash in 2015. But say what you want about O.J. Simpson. He was a pro athlete. He was an actor. He was a sports commentator. He was a 1993 white Ford Bronco enthusiast. He survived a suicide attempt. He murdered 2 people and got away with it. Went to jail for 8 years for stealing his own crap. Got out and became a Twitter troll. On top of a lot more, this man lived a full life, and it's worth talking about. O.J. Simpson. What do you guys think?
OJ the Juice has passed away. So I was born in California, and I remember this verdict. I was little, and I never have seen in my entire life since then so many people absolutely glued to the television every single day. That's all there was on every single channel. There was no streaming service. It was just broadcast channels with the little bunny ears, and you're trying to get the right connection so you can see the channel. It was wild. It was absolutely wild. I remember seeing it on the television. And I'm like, why is this guy running? And then you see everything that happened, and you see how the Kardashians came and got famous from it. And then, as you said, Kevin, he went to jail because he stole back his own memorabilia with guns, which is just insane. And I had no idea he was even cancerous, but geez, that guy is something else, man. And lastly, in 1992, I'm going to age myself. There was a game called Squeeze the Juice, and it was an Orenthal James board game. And now I get really expensive.
Oh my God. Well, my thoughts are, you summed it up pretty nicely with his accomplishments. And it's unfortunate to see that with such great accomplishments like that even after he dies, his legacy kind of still is all over the murder that happened, essentially. Like, nobody remembers that he was an amazing American football player. Nobody really remembers the acting moments. Nobody remembered. I think majority of people just remember the 93 Bronco chase. And then they also probably, if they're my age or so, or Kev's age, they probably saw the Netflix documentary or HBO documentary, whatever it is, where it was the trials versus the juice.
Yep.
And that's how they know OJ Simpson. So it's unfortunate to see such great accomplishments get overshadowed by the murder. And the one thing that I'll point out is that there's a lot of people that I'm not sitting here and saying like, sympathizing for a murder or anything like that. I think that it's very unfortunate that that happened. But here's the thing is that a lot of people are celebrating that. But then you also have to think that they realized like his kids, they only have one dad. He's his dad, right? And now he's gone. So that's the case for them. But yeah, it's really interesting that even when he dies, the legacy of that kind of murder essentially overshadows all of the other accomplishments, and it just shows you America never forgets.
Well, you're absolutely right. I think the thing about OJ that everybody needs to recognize is whether you think that he is like the biggest problem in the world because of the murder, or you stan him because you loved him as a football player. It's important to recognize, and the reason why I cared so much about this is because there's two main reasons. The first is the cultural icon that OJ was. Like, again, how many people do you know that were all of those things? Pro athlete, actor, sports commentator, murderer. Like there's so many things that make up OJ Simpson that it's iconic in its own right. Not necessarily great, not necessarily bad, all of the above. And I think that there's something to talk about with that. The second thing is also the kind of noticing how America shifted in part because of OJ Simpson in terms of race relations. And that's what I think is really fascinating about it. And just his death is another time to recognize that, because if you look at the way in which the trial happened, so I'm studying to be an attorney. And so I find his trial to be one of the most fascinating because it was barely based on the facts. If you look at Johnny Cochran, I mean, even South Park has a whole thing about how Johnny Cochran, they make a joke that he uses this thing called the Chewbacca method, where in South Park, they say, oh, well, Johnny Cochran he doesn't even talk about the case at hand. He talks about Chewbacca or something. And that's essentially what he did with OJ's trial. He didn't necessarily change it to Chewbacca, but it wasn't at that point a case about whether or not he murdered Nicole Brown Simpson. It was more of a case as to what is the current state of race relations. Was he targeted because he's a black man? It was going off of all the Rodney King stuff that had happened like a year prior.
By the way, he literally wrote a book, and it's on screen, and it's called "If I Did It: Confessions of the Killer." So this dude took a page out of Barnum and Bailey's and made a book, literally saying what everyone was saying, and made money off it. Like, that's
so.
If you did something like that now, I don't know if people would stand for it.
There's also, at least from what I understand, so there's that, but at least from what I remember, and I could be wrong, fact check me in the comments, I don't care. But from what I remember is that it was actually a part of the civil trial, because in criminal court, it was found that OJ did not kill Nicole Brown or Rod Goldman. But in civil court, when they sued for damages, it was found that he did commit the murders, which means he wasn't going to go to jail for it, but he owed money for it. And so all of the money from that book. So first off, the book was in production at the time, I believe. And so they made it so that it had to look like it said, I did it. Like, that was part of the civil litigation. And then also the majority, if not all of the profits from it, went to the families of Nicole Brown Simpson and Rod Goldman.
That's crazy. I think that the fact that he wrote that, though, is the outcome of not having double jeopardy in the United States, because if you can confess to it after being not found guilty, then beautiful. You can make money off of it, and then you can use that money to pay the civil lawsuit that you will lose, because Kevin, as you know, future lawyer, the standard for civil court is much different than it is for criminal court.
Yeah, it's not beyond a reasonable doubt. It's usually based on
liability,
that or preponderance of the evidence.
Yep, exactly. So, but again, guys, the fact that we're sitting here and talking about it just shows what a legacy essentially, or how hot of a topic, I wouldn't say legacy, but how big of a topic OJ Simpson is himself. And it just shows you guys from how interesting. I mean, they talk about how the courts essentially go against minorities and whatnot. But here's a perfect example of an individual who's a minority who essentially was found not guilty just because of the race relations at the time. So, and this was what, the 90s, right?
Yep.
Yep.
Well, and it all came off because it was in I believe same county as everything with Rodney King, and so it was just going off of all the and Fabian probably knows it even better because he lives like down the street where like Rodney King's murder was. So
yeah, no, it was a crazy time in Los Angeles. In fact, I was just telling my aunt about the riots back in the day, and it's, you know, when you watch some of the stuff on YouTube, which you can just put the 1992 LA riots and look at the footage, it's just insane what normal was back then. Like if that happened right now, well, we had it when in the summer of love in 2020, but it wasn't as bad, I believe, the way that the LA riots were, even though it was a more widespread, because this was a very specific area. It was crazy living here. It was absolute crazy. And they would not have wanted anything like that to happen because number one, I don't think they had the manpower unless they called in, you know, the National Guard again, which they actually did in California. People fail to realize that they called in the National Guard. So I think it's just crazy to know that he got off because they didn't want another riot.
Before we head off this topic, I just want to say, have you guys heard of the rooftop Koreans that came out of the whole?
Watch it on YouTube. Those guys
watch
are bad,
it on YouTube.
man.
Exactly. That's all I'm going to say. It's just, if you haven't heard of them, go watch it, because I think that's the coolest thing to come out of this whole entire Rodney King riots that happened. But any last words before we head to the next story, which is kind of related in terms of it being a criminal court case? No.
Oh, I did want to say sorry about OJ too. Also, if you have not seen how he was a Twitter troll afterwards, like I had a video. We don't need to get to it, but there is a video from him on Twitter when like the Alex Murdaugh stuff was going on, and literally, so he posts this to Twitter, and the caption on it was like, "A lot of people have been asking me about Alex Murdaugh," and like in the first 10 seconds, he goes, "Yeah, a lot of people are asking me when I think about the Alex Murdaugh trial, like I'm an expert or something." And I just thought it was the funniest thing in the world. But no, you should go look into how he was a Twitter troll after he got out of prison. It was hilarious.
I saw that the second he got out of jail, he was already trolling. So we can tack that on as another badge of honor, a master troller.
Yep.
All right. We'll close the coffin on OJ Simpson with that. No pun intended. So we'll roll into the next criminal story that we have on deck. So Ethan Crumbley, is that a name that perhaps sounds familiar? Well, this was actually a school shooter years and years ago in Michigan that was a troubled teen that went into the school and just shot up all of his classmates. Essentially, he ended up killing 4 in the process, injuring 6. But the reason this story is getting much more attention than any other school shooter is because the parents of the school shooter are actually the first parents in U.S. history to be convicted for the kids' actions. Now, the prosecutors are essentially saying that James, the father, failed to intervene despite his teen son's unstable mental state, and even neglected to lock up the semi-automatic gun that he bought the teen. So, gentlemen, before I get your thoughts on this, I just want to go over the entire story that both parents were actually charged, are convicted, and now going to be behind bars for about 15 years. And they're being charged with involuntary manslaughter charges, or convicted with involuntary manslaughter charges, because the court essentially, and the prosecutors are claiming, and have found them guilty in doing so, that the parents neglected this. They essentially didn't lock up the gun. The kid was obviously having mental health issues, and they proceeded to buy him a gun as a Christmas gift. So, fellas, what do you think about this? Should parents be held accountable when negligence is like this that leads to a school shooting? Is this an overreach by the federal government or state governments? What are y'all's thoughts?
Well, there's certain things that we know are happening, and that is parental rights are under attack. In fact, I believe it was a deputy prime minister of Canada, the lady who's tweaking out, looks like she's on meth, twitching all the time now in news conferences, whatever her name is. I believe it was her that said, or maybe it was crazy clown Trudeau said that there are no such things as parental rights, but there's only children's rights. So we know that the entire movement of the left wants to remove children's parental rights from their children. So if we're looking at that, now you have a situation where parents bought a gun, had it in the home, and the kid accessed it. Did you say that the parents bought the kid a gun, David?
Correct. The parents bought the kid a gun for Christmas as a Christmas gift.
So now if you're a parent and you're thinking, oh my gosh, if something happens and I bought my kid a gun, I can go to jail because this is a test case. So I may not buy my children, my kid a gun anymore, which all plays into the hands of the neo-Marxist communist left, which they want no parental rights, where the state owns your children, where you as a parent can't do anything except put up with whatever they give you. And now, as a double whammy, to kill two birds with one stone, if you buy your kids a gun and they use it, you could be liable. I mean, imagine that.
I actually kind of disagree a little bit, just a little bit. Look, like the way I see it is, if you buy your child a gun, I think it's very instance specific, where I'd have a lot of questions. If you buy your child a gun and you don't teach them properly how to use it, and you are not sure that they are well equipped to own one, then you are in some way at fault. I mean, if your child is under the age of 18, then yeah, you are in some way at fault. You can't ask for parental rights and say that I should have the right to ensure my child doesn't chop off their genitals, and then not also assume responsibility when you purchase them a gun and they go out and kill many people with it. Like that's the way I see it. And so, do I think the government would use it necessarily, or use that power to prosecute a parent in all the same, or always the same? And do I think it would always be fair? No. But if you purchase your child a gun, you should ensure that they're responsible with it. That's the way I see it. Just as much as that, if you're a parent, you should be responsible with your child's sexual organs. Like, so that's you can't have it both ways. Does that make sense?
It absolutely does. And that's exactly the same perspective I took to this story, is that essentially if you're going to claim responsibility over your kid, and then that responsibility suddenly drops as soon as that kid commits a crime, especially if he committed that crime because of your negligence, then you're essentially being hypocritical. Let's be honest here, right? So the main idea that I took from this is that the parents knew that the kid was mentally unstable and just brushed it off, essentially. So one, to me, that's a little bit of bad parenting. So that's a factor in there to put in. The second thing is that, why would you buy a 15-year-old a gun and then not put it in a safe? I mean, or lock it up in a safe, right? You can even put it in a safe, but not locking that safe is, I believe, another factor of negligence that we have to consider here. So, but the biggest thing that I take away from this, though, is that a lot of Chicago parents are going to get locked up here soon and held accountable, because that is the real problem that we're having. I believe that if the parents are going to practice just gun safety, just common sense gun safety protocols, then the kids are more than likely to be common sense with their guns. If you don't, and you neglect it, and you just throw around your gun and you leave one in the chamber and everything like that, then you're just you're just asking for that trouble to happen. What do you guys think about the fact that he's 15 years old? Would that be different if he was 18?
So what I don't know are the particulars of what are the laws in the state. So what do they actually charge him with? It was negligence. Was it because of how they handled the gun, or the fact that they didn't help the kid who had mental problems?
It was two aspects. They failed to intervene because of the son's unstable mental state. So there was a lot of different signs, essentially. The way the court put it, I don't have it here, but it's somewhere in the article, that they failed essentially to stop a runaway train before it hitting, essentially. And the other thing was that they were negligent in terms of not keeping the gun locked up in a safe, which I believe that this is in Michigan, which is a state law, essentially.
Got it. Okay, then that's what I wasn't sure of, if you had to have it locked up. Here's a slippery slope, and this is with any argument that the left can make a point and then go from there, is, okay, let's say there was some negligence, etc., because a gun was purchased by the parents, and the parents have a duty to the child. I get that. Now, what if the kid killed someone with a knife? Would it be the same argument there? If the parents purchased a knife, which clearly they did because the kid is 15, he wasn't working, but you have the same constant with the mental health state, but the variable is now it's not a gun, now it's a knife. Now it's not a knife, he just killed someone with his bare hands, right? At what point do you use this as a test case and say, well, because of that, now this is what the left does. They use this landmark case to then start chipping away at individual liberties. They did it with, let's say, Gay rights came around, and then trans rights, and now every other thing that you can think of. Now they want to have minor attracted persons have the same rights as everyone else. So I'm always very cautious when I hear cases like this, because I don't know the particulars, but I do know that the left will take things little by little by little by little.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from, but I mean, to an extent, like I said, if you have parents and you give your child anything that could be used as a serious weapon, such as a firearm, even a knife, and you're also the same people asking for the right to ensure that your child doesn't go get an abortion or have some level of a sexual surgery because they're going through a phase, then you need to have both sides of it covered. You need to be able to answer for taking care of your child on both sides of it. And that's really the way that I see it, is that you can't ask for parental rights and then not also assume responsibility when your child in some way underage does something that's irresponsible, more than irresponsible.
I completely agree with you, Kev. And especially if we don't set this precedent right now, imagine what this can lead to in terms of parents not assuming responsibility for their kids' actions. So it can lead to even worse society and culture that we're in right now.
And if anything, I'm even agreeing with you to some extent, Fabian, is how much the left could take. The left will take anything at any means. And so if you say that parents should not have responsibility over their child in this instance, then they will also use that against you in saying parents will not have responsibility in terms of if their child is okay enough to where the parent will not be held liable in this instance, then the child has every right to consent to genital mutilation, to abortion, to sex, and more.
Which we know that's
It's a
exactly
fine
the
line.
left. Yep. It's a fine line, and that's exactly what the left is taking us to. We're going to take a short commercial break real quickly before we go to our next topic. You don't want to miss this because apparently there's an insurrection at the Capitol, but they're not calling it an insurrection. So stay tuned. We'll be back to it.
Blah, 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 blah. What are you talking about? Here, have some freedom to up. Now, the Constitution is awesome. That's what it is.
So I think you guys will absolutely love this and will join me in laughing at this, that dozens of anti-Israel protesters were arrested after storming the cafeteria in the Senate office building. So, and I don't hear anybody calling this an insurrection, but dozens of anti-Israel protesters were arrested Tuesday after storming through a Senate office building and briefly causing the cafeteria to shut down. So they even shut something down. Sounds a little familiar. The mob of demonstrators marched inside the Dirkskin Senate office building at around 12:30 p.m. while chanting phrases such as, wait for it, guys, the Senate cannot eat until Gaza eats. Wow. So approximately 50 people were arrested for illegally demonstrating inside the Senate office building this afternoon. It is illegal to demonstrate inside of the congressional buildings. And I think, production, if we could maybe cue up the video while we talk about this, because the video itself
Wait,
is just
was this
funny.
in DC? This was DC.
This is the Senate building, so this is the Capitol.
Join our team. Please visit our job fair on April 20th.
Production, I think it's actually a different
9
video. It's outside of the article, but you'll find it in a second. But guys, what do you think about this? I mean, I don't hear the news talking about this. They stopped an official thing. Here we go. We have the video. So let's watch the video, and then I'll get y'all's thoughts about this.
Oh my God.
Palestine will be free.
It's always the same suspects.
Palestine will be free. We will not avert our eyes. Palestine will be free. We are Christians for a free Palestine. We are here. To pray for the food of Gaza. Not bomb. Congress and their staff will not eat today. Until Gaza eats. I
mean, it looks like a few of them
Hey.
can stop eating and instead send their food to Gaza. There were some large hosses and hostresses in there.
They sure were. Guys, before I get your thoughts about this, just a little quick context for this. So this was actually Christians for Free Palestine took credit for orchestrating the demonstration alongside Code Pink, a self-described grassroots feminist organization notorious for causing disruptions and numerous congressional hearings. So yes, these are Christians to Free Palestine or whatever it means, or Gaza, whatever. Before I get your thoughts, I promise that's the last thing I'm going to say. We do know that Christians get persecuted and thrown off the roofs, and their religion is not allowed to be really practiced under Sharia law or under Islamic rule or jihad rule, right? Which is what takes place in Gaza. So what is y'all's thoughts about this entire ordeal?
Fabian? Yeah, I got thoughts, but
I know you guys are speechless.
Okay. Yeah, let me just say this.
Speechless.
There are many. So this is the MO of the left. They develop these organizations and they give it any random name, and they get a random group of people to say, I'm that. And then they demonstrate. So Christians for Palestine, the name speaks for itself, right? You don't have to even wonder at what that is. It's like having a really good website name like toiletpaperhandles.com or something like that. But the problem is, and I don't know if that's available, but it is, you better give me 20% if someone buys it right now. But the thing is that these people are the weirdest of the weirdest, and they make these banners and say these names so that people who are low information voters hear this and say, oh my gosh, Christians are supporting Gaza now. Like, what should I do? I'm so confused. I read the Bible and the Bible says support Israel, but oh my gosh, these people at this Capitol, they said I can't eat. So what do I do? And depending on your level of critical thinking, you may fall into the trap that they set for you, which is exactly this.
Absolutely. Well, even building on top of that a little bit is the fascination I have with leftist protest and leftist activism. If you look at it, it's always to disrupt. And so, like, think about when we use the term disrupt. Usually, to disrupt is only positive in terms of business. You're a disruptor if you're in business of some kind. Other than that, it's relatively negative. But if you really look at all the times that, and I've done so many different TikTok reactions to things that lefties do, is like, I've seen vegans on buses, like mariachi bands that trap you, and they're just like, stop eating the meat. It's gonna make all these poor little pigs feel like crap and like they're gonna die and blah blah blah. Or you get like, I was at Illinois State University, and we had the Graduate Workers Union. They were the union of graduate workers. If they didn't already explain that in their title. And they were all mad because not only was their tuition paid for, they weren't getting paid enough because like they had like $12 an hour or something on top of the tuition already being paid for doing half-assed work and giving me B's on shit. But so these graduate workers like walked through our what was it called? Our administrative building. So like, we're the president of the university. They walked through and they were all mad because they weren't getting paid enough. They had to disrupt. Or you see people that throw paint on the Mona Lisa, or they do all these things that disrupt. And then when conservatives get real mad that they believe the election gets stolen in 2020. And again, we already covered it wasn't all conservatives. There were some there, but we get Trump supporters and they get real mad and they disrupt. It's an insurrection. It's a coup d'etat. It's the destruction of democracy. But when Brett Kavanaugh is trying to get confirmed back in, what was that, 2017, 2018? And you literally have leftist protesters that are breaking windows in the Senate confirmation hearing. Like they're breaking the windows. They're pounding on the door right outside. No one calls that an insurrection.
Kevin, it's because they're oppressed, so they can do that.
I'm oppressed too.
Bingo.
I'm a woman. I'm going to tell you I'm a woman, and that makes me oppressed. So I'm oppressed now. So does that mean I get to go do whatever the fuck I want, wherever the fuck I am? No.
Absolutely. No, Kev. Come on. It's a double standard. We know this. This is how America is nowadays, is that if you are who you are right now as a white male, you don't have these privileges. But if you just change your pronouns, my friend, you have new privileges. So come on.
Like that guy who joined a Zoom call for was it Fat Celebration? It's a Fat Celebration Zoom, and the guy is clearly not fat. And they questioned him. He says, "I identify as fat." So they asked him to leave still. That guy is absolute stud. Maybe we can get him on the podcast. But it's just funny how they live in this reality, this little make-believe world. But then when reality hits them, they don't understand how to cope with it. There was a video that Gentry and I a few months ago reviewed. It was this girl getting arrested. It is incredible. She was saying, "Well, are you drinking?" She's like, "Well, I have generational trauma and I'm oppressed," and every excuse under the sun. But when reality hit and the cop said, "Turn around," she completely broke down. She didn't know how to handle it because he was actually putting his hands on her, and all that make-believe crap wasn't make-believe anymore. She really had the cop's hand on her because she was resisting arrest, and then she started crying like a little baby. And that's what they do when you say no.
It's a bunch of social justice warriors with a bunch of buzzwords. They don't like to get into the nuances of things because, like Kev's saying, they just want to disrupt things because they believe that is the most effective tactic. And if we look at Marxists, for example, they like to disrupt things. It's one of their main factors in their revolutions, in their culture revolutions and everything like that. So Kev, I see you wanting to come in on that.
Because I went off on a tangent and I never finished my full thought, which was, so you compare that. So you have these disruptors, and not in the positive way of the business or anything like that. You have these disruptors, and that's how leftists perform their activism. Along with that, I mean, they even stand in the middle of a flipping street so I can't drive my car through it. And I start thinking maybe I get 10 points if I hit one. But then you get to conservatives. And so I've done conservative activism. I am a conservative activist. And so when you actually go out in public and you see conservative activism, because you don't hear about it in the leftist way. I mean, they'll talk about January 6th, but the majority of conservative activism, you don't hear about. What is it? It's usually a college kid on a college campus with a table. And when you do hear about it, it's because Charlie Kirk came there, and you have a lot of people that are really mad that Charlie Kirk was sitting at the table saying that men can't become women. That's conservative activism. Conservative activism is literally just standing there saying, "This is what I believe," on a sign. It's not standing in the middle of the street. It's not going on your bus or train yelling at you that you're a terrible person. For the most part, I will say you have some of those Christian people that go out and say like everybody's going to hell, but I don't consider that conservative activism. Why? Because it's not policy based. It's only religiously based. But
that's actually a really good point.
So I will say that there are people that might align with conservatives, but they're not conservative. It's not conservative activism. It's not political activism. It's religious activism. Totally different field of view. But conservative activism, political activism for conservatives is not disruption based.
It's not. And if you look at all the different times that conservatives did protests or led some sort of activism, it doesn't mirror anywhere near what the left does. And look at cancel culture, for example. When we want to boycott something, we don't go into the streets in front of the offices and demand that they throw somebody out of the job site, or that they change how they approach things, or that they change their syrup, for example. You guys remember how they had to change the syrup name because it was too racist? Well, conservatives, they actually protest in terms of boycotting the place, making the place lose money, making the label lose money. And that's how they change things. That's how they get what they want. But these idiots, they love to go inside the damn Capitol and taunt a bunch of weird phrases like Christians for Gaza. To me, when I hear that, I'm like, whoa, this is the same thing as chickens for KFC, for example. I mean, literally the exact same thing. Guys, last thoughts before we move on to our next topic here.
It's the same old suspects, the same weak-looking people, a bunch of diabetes-filled leftists who are just complaining about everything but doing nothing to actually help the economy. They're more worried about something happening in a place they're never going to visit than they are about what's happening next door. And that's a level of idiocy that I think it's actually unmatched. Because when your house is on fire, but you're worried about something happening halfway across the world, which you know nothing about really, except what you're fed. You've never been there. You don't even know people who live there. But you're passing judgment, and not only passing judgment, but you're actually activating yourself, going into these buildings and trying to apparently starve people for not thinking the way you think. Like that, it's just so stupid. Like, I get it. There's bad things happening. This is not the way to handle things as an adult. And I say that term loosely because these adults aren't really adults mentally.
I think you hit it on the nail there. Let's move on to another story that's taking Twitter all over right now. And it has a big implications on the upcoming election right now. So a ruling out of Arizona Supreme Court essentially upheld a very, very old abortion law, an 1850s abortion law or something like that, which essentially has a lot of implications for Trump's campaign. I kind of termed this as abortion looms over Trump's campaign, because you saw essentially the Arizona Supreme Court make an interesting ruling that both Trump and Kari Lake, which is running for Senate in Arizona, both didn't really seem to like it. So, and Kev, I know that this is a topic that you really like to talk about, so I'll love your opinion about it, but let's kind of open it up a little bit. Clip, she actually does a phenomenal job of going over the entire story. Yeah, let's listen to it. Let's just go ahead and play it because she does a great job of explaining everything.
Abortion ban. That ruling triggered these headlines. However, here are some pretty important aspects of this ruling that you might not know just by reading the headlines, or in some cases, reading even further. Number one, the state's attorney general has already said she will not be prosecuting women or doctors under this law. What that means is, even though the state Supreme Court said that the 1913 law can be enforced, so long as the attorney general doesn't prosecute people under the law, it really has no effect. The second thing is that these headlines say the law was enacted in 1864. Granted, the law has origins back to 1864, but Arizona as a state wasn't even granted statehood until 1912. This law was enacted by Arizona in 1913. And finally, the question for the Supreme Court in this case was whether the 2022 enactment of a 15-week abortion ban effectively repealed this 1913 law that was never officially repealed, or if the 1913 law still stands. Now, there's so much more to know about this case, but this is your reminder to always read beyond the headlines, and in some cases, do even more research than that. And of course, I'm always here for you. So if you want to know more, check out tonight's episode of the Unbiased Podcast, available on all podcast platforms.
All right. Thank you, Jordan, for that great summary right there. So before I get y'all's thoughts, I just want to open this up a little bit more. So like I said, Kari Lake, Trump, they both kind of came out against this ruling, especially because this ruling came out a day after Trump tried to essentially neutralize this whole topic with abortion. There's a video that you can go find it yourself and look at it. But essentially, he came out and taunted an idea of essentially some kind of abortion ban, but essentially saying that it's still up to the states to determine everything, which is what exactly Roe v. Wade overturn was all about. Just little more context to add to this. A lot of pundits believe that essentially the red wave in 2022 never came because of the Roe v. Wade ruling that happened. So abortion is a very big topic when it comes down to the left. It really brings out the people to vote. So I can see why Trump and Kari Lake perhaps tried to kind of kind of neutralize this, essentially, this ruling and whatnot. But what do you guys think when about the ruling itself? Is it dangerous for the November election? Will this have implications on the overall campaign? What do you guys think?
Take it away, Kevin.
Okay, see, because like abortion is like such a big topic for me. Actually, just last weekend, I don't think I got any videos, but just last weekend, I was invited, along with some others, but I was invited to talk to an independent Republican women's forum in Illinois. Why was I invited to talk there? Because men need to speak up on issues that are traditionally talked about as women's issues, abortion being one of the biggest. Look, I personally am anti-abortion. I politically am anti-abortion. It made me actually unhappy to see that Trump came out and said this is a states' right issue when we have a federal law that says that a murderer, if somebody who murders a pregnant woman, they can be charged with double homicide. Why is it that you take one of those parties that is exterminated in the womb that is not also federally considered murder? Why not? It's not just women that all of a sudden a baby pops out of nowhere and it's already there. No. A man has to be involved. So a man absolutely has a right to talk about this issue. Now, when it comes to this Arizona ruling is fascinating to me because the media will spin it in a fascinating way. Here's what they do. And I actually just recorded a video yesterday. It should air tomorrow on my channel at Speechless Kev, Speechless with Kev Phares. Check it out. Subscribe, everything. But here's what I say. Here's what they do in the media. They will call this thing, they'll say, oh my gosh, it's a Civil War era bill. They'll come out and say it's a Civil War era bill. Why? Because they want to associate it with things that are negative. Civil War, slavery, race relations during the Civil War. They will try to associate it with that to try to make you feel as if this bill is automatically bad. But just because something is old, just because a rule is old, does not automatically make it morally wrong. Think about it. The 10 Commandments, you shall not kill. That's a bill that's thousands of years old. Does that automatically make it wrong? No. But they'll try to make you they'll make you think that it's wrong because it's old, because it's from the Civil War era. That's the first thing. Trump coming out and saying that he's not pro-abortion, that it's a states' rights issue. Not happy for conservatives. Is it going to affect 2024? Yes, because strategically it's a good option. Strategically, it's good.
Here's my take on this. Leaving out, and obviously there's a religious element, political element, everything, right? We do not have enough human beings on the planet to sustain ourselves in any way, shape, or form in most of the world. So if you're just a logical person, think to yourself, why would we be killing more people, more babies, if we already have a massive problem not having enough people? Simply, that's just a mathematical equation. You don't have enough people to repopulate. Certain places are, a lot of the Western world is not. Okay, so I'd like to hear someone's logical answer on why humanity has to take a backseat and potentially not survive because of your narcissism. And that has nothing to do with religion. That's simply a mathematical equation there. And then the other thing I would say is, I know Republicans, especially lately, they're trying to figure out how to navigate these waters because it is a very big issue with women, especially. Dude, women aren't going to vote Republican most of the time anyway, especially white liberal women. I mean, what are you trying to save at this point? Are you going to, it's this whole dichotomy of, do you want to win the election and lose the issue, or do you want to keep the issue and potentially lose the election? I mean, you just got to say what you think, man.
I think you make a really good point, actually, Fabian. And I talk to this with my guy friends a lot about this, is that if you really talk to males that are Republican, actually it doesn't matter really. If you talk to males, I don't believe that abortion is in their top 10 issues when it comes down to what you're voting for. But for women, it actually is in the top 3. And actually, if you look at the statistics, I have it right here. 1 in 8 women voters say abortion is their top issue, where 1 in 8 voters in general say one of the top 5 topics for them is abortion. So it's pretty interesting, and you make a good point there. I want to play this Trump's response to the Arizona ruling. He was in Atlanta, and it literally happened, I don't know, an hour after the ruling came out. Let's watch it, and then I want you guys' thoughts about his response.
Yeah, they did, and that'll be straightened out. And as you know, it's all about states' rights. That'll be straightened out. And I'm sure that the governor and everybody else are going to bring it back into reason, and that will be taken care of, I think, very quickly. What do you think about Florida? Florida is probably maybe going to change also. See, it's all it's the will of the people. This is what I've been saying. It's a perfect system. So for 52 years, people have wanted to end Roe v. Wade to get it back to the states. We did that. It was an incredible thing, an incredible achievement. We did that, and now the states have it, and the states are putting out what they want. It's the will of the people. So Florida's probably going to change. Arizona's going to definitely change. Everybody wants that to happen. And you're getting the will of the people. It's been pretty amazing when you think. New inflation numbers came out. Did Arizona go too far? Yeah,
so we can pause that. So I want your guys' just take on this. He says that it's state rights, but we saw in Alabama, the Supreme Court essentially go against IVF. And now all the conservatives, not all, but a lot of conservatives are rallying up in support of IVF, which I'm in support of as well. Arizona Supreme Court puts this interesting ruling out. And now he's also saying that state rights. It's kind of, I don't know. He's kind of saying both things at the same time. What do you guys think?
So I think that this issue, and I actually did a very deep dive into the history of abortion, because it's changed all across history, even in the times of Samaria. They had it one way, and then it changed, and it changed back. It's been changing all the time. Even in England, that's where we had these first really westernized views of abortion, because it used to be considered murder. And then in England, it kind of changed. And then here in America, it was very strict. Then it got loose. Now it's becoming more strict again. So it's never going to be an issue that's solved. You're always going to have this back and forth. But the issue, I think it's very, very, very overcomplicated. If you think that baby should be killed because someone doesn't want to have them, it's an inconvenience, then that's the way you think. If you don't think they should kill the babies, then it's a very simple stance. To say, oh, well, 15 weeks and 7 weeks and 14 weeks, and those are all just nuances to try to make your dumb position more malleable. If it's no, if the answer is that it's wrong, then it's wrong. There's no degree of wrong. It's just wrong. It's a very simple issue to me.
I think that the thing with the Arizona ruling, and Kev, if you have information on this, and if I'm wrong, correct me, but I think the issue with the ruling essentially is that it outlaws abortions even in the cases of rape or incest. I know that mother. Okay,
it does. So it's the only exception is the life of the mother.
Exactly. So with that caveat in there, what do you guys think? I mean, about this ruling? Because I agree with you, Fabian. It's a yes or no thing. The whole weeks thing is actually, just adding on to the thing or whatnot. But this is a little different case, it seems like.
Here's what I heard. Here's what I've heard from others, and this is what I believe because I was convinced. I hate how people put rape and incest together. Because sometimes they can be together, but there are instances of incest that are not necessarily rape. And I don't want to talk about all that, but it's just the point of being is that no matter how despicable, disgusting, gross, how much we hate the reason that a child's life is conceived, no matter how terrible it is, that does not decrease the value of that child's life.
I definitely agree with that.
And so that's what I'd say. And so like I've had times where I've gone back and forth, especially on the issue of rape, where I'm like, man, like I wouldn't want to have a woman that feels or that is legally compelled to carry that child to term. But at the same time, the value of that child's life does not change. The child did not choose to be conceived that way. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I feel
again,
like
it's a very, it's a very simple issue. it's not the kid's fault. Why would you kill the kid for someone else's fault? The mother is going to live through it, right? Sure, you might have to take some therapy, and you may have these
Like,
things,
I
but
feel for that
have
woman.
things.
I feel for
Absolutely.
that woman, like, so much. I think, like, I am not a person who believes in government assistance for, like, almost anything. That woman should have her life funded. If your child was conceived by rape and you carry it to term, your life should be funded, government funded. I don't
No
care.
more taxes. Yeah, absolutely. Government assistance, because you're doing a service to humanity at that point when you
Exactly.
don't want to do. Just like people who join the army, right? Most people
That's a
don't
good
want to
point.
die, but they will do it for their country.
Mhm.
So, and they get tax breaks, and they get money from the government, they get health care, they get VA benefits. So why not extend the exact same thing, as Kevin was saying, to someone who does that? It's not the kid's fault. Why would you kill the kid, the baby, because of something some bozo did? Like, just doesn't make any sense.
Yep.
Those are all really, really good points. And I'll just say this, that it kind of goes back on what you said earlier, Kev. If you're watching this and you're saying, wow, what a bunch of bozos, a bunch of dudes talking about what would be a woman's issue. My whole thing that kind of goes with that is that, and it goes back to what you were saying, Kev, that this is not a men's issue. So how dare they be talking about this and legislating policies and whatnot. White men fought against slavery. They weren't black. Okay, so it wasn't their issue essentially, but they fought for their rights. The same way men fought for women's rights when they received their right to vote and work and whatnot. So you don't necessarily need to be something in order to speak about that topic. So I want to make that very clear. And I think that both of you guys have really, really great points and interesting points. My only concern necessarily is that I love conservative policies, America First policies, and I believe the only way you can institute those and actually make them into 30, 40-year policies that shape our institutions and whatnot is by winning elections, right? And it's hard to win elections when, if production, can we cue up this Biden campaign ad? Because they already created a campaign ad that they've put $30 million in. They committed $30 million across battleground states to play an ad that's going to emotionally hit people into place. And here's the thing is that abortion is such a key motivating factor to get voters out for Democrats that I'm a little worried about this. Production, if we don't have that video, it's fine. No worries. But
You know what? Let me say something about this issue, because it's being used to get conservatives to not really say what they really mean. Let me explain. In Islam, every single thing they believe it to the death, to the death. Meanwhile, Christians are saying, well, or conservatives, well, yeah, but we got to win the election in this. That's exactly what they want you to do. They want you to be wishy-washy so that you don't have anything to stand on. And if they can get you to renege on that, and the entire Christian movement is like, yeah, well, I mean, yeah, it's bad, but then they've already won. Because don't say it's not going to win you elections. A majority of the world, I don't know if the majority, but a vast majority of the world is Muslim and follows Islam. And they're not going to recant on these issues. That's what they believe. And they believe it with such fervor that if you go against it, then you're going to be banished. But
That's
then Christians are like,
absolutely. And like, that's the thing is like, that's what I really realized is because, so I grew up in a time where I was 12 when Ogre Biefeld went through the Supreme Court and legalized gay marriage. I had a teacher at the time who was lesbian. And so I went through a time in which I was told by society that I needed to accept homosexuality as if it was just this normal thing that is not in any way sinful. No, we as Christians cannot sit back and say, oh, no, we need to be accepting. We need to be accepting. No. There's a difference between toleration and acceptance. You can tolerate somebody in a public setting that has a wildly antithetical worldview to what you believe. But to fully accept and say, I'm an ally of the gays, or I'm an ally of those who want to procure abortions, I just wouldn't do it personally. That is not in and of itself Christian. Now, that doesn't mean to say, oh, you should consider voting for Biden over Trump or voting for somebody else. No, that's not what I'm saying. But to be mildly frustrated is absolutely warranted in this case. Because as of right now, there is not a single pro-life presidential candidate.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And listen, I know Trump I don't personally know Trump, but we know Trump, right? As soon as he's going to see the polls, as soon as he's going to see the reactions and the headlines, and especially this ad that I think production got queued up for us, he's going to probably start to sound a little bit more liberal, socially liberal on his approach to abortion, even though he put in 3 really, really great Supreme Court justices, really conservative to the point of where they actually overturned Roe v. Wade. Okay, never mind. Sorry. I thought we had that video, but guys, any last thoughts before we move to another topic? I know we're a little bit into our stream tonight.
It's fine. I can go as long as we want. But when it comes to this one, abortion is something that's really important to me from all aspects of it. But once again, don't just because rape is taboo or incest is taboo, don't back off. Don't be like, oh, no. Like we'll need to allow. It can be a conversation. But once again, the child's life does not lose value based on the means of which it was conceived. And when it comes to the life of the mother will only be threatened either during birth or in terms of ectopic. I'm sorry, I'm terrible at pronouncing it, but ectopic pregnancy. An ectopic pregnancy and terminating that pregnancy is not the same as an abortion. Do your research. Know the science. Just want to make sure everybody knows that.
Yeah, I think you have a really good stand on it, honestly, and it's actually the conservative stand on it. So, Kev, I agree with you.
We got the ad up.
We got the ad up. Let's play the ad.
Because of Donald Trump, millions of women lost the fundamental freedom to control their own bodies. And now
isn't that
women's
ad?
lives are in danger because of that. The question is, if Donald Trump gets back in power, what freedom will you lose next?
So we'll find that ad and we'll throw it up.
But it's more bullcrap, because that's the thing. It's like Donald Trump is literally coming out, and this is just another example of how nothing will ever be good enough for the left. Is Donald Trump is coming out and saying this is a states' rights issue. I played in the video that I recorded last night. I will everybody go follow my channel. You'll be able to see it. I played a clip of Tammy Duckworth, who is the senator from Illinois, the crippled veteran woman. And she complains about Donald Trump and how the Arizona ruling is Donald Trump's fault and he's so terrible. But the thing is Donald Trump came out and said, I am in favor of states' rights, which not only allows for Arizona to do whatever the hell they want, but it also allows for Illinois to make it legal for 12-year-olds to get abortions without their parents knowing. Real law in Illinois. Underage people can get abortions without parental notification in Tammy Duckworth's state, but she will still say that it's Donald Trump's fault that Arizona is allowed to do whatever the hell they want. Illinois is able to do whatever the hell they want because of the same principle.
Yeah, but that's not what they want, though. That's decentralization of power, and they cannot win. They cannot institute this neo-communism in America if they allow states to have those rights. So the federal government has to trump everything. Every single thing, and they hate when things like this happen because it's out of their control. It's in the states' hands.
See, my only issue with this is that obviously, as you can see on the very left extreme side of things, is that they allow abortion up to 9 months, essentially, and in many places like Colorado. I'm pretty sure California is still in one of those categories. But then on the right side of things, they'll take it to these extremes where they will institute certain laws, like not laws, but rulings like we saw from Arizona, essentially. And I feel like personally, again, in terms of a political win, the best position to take on this is letting states have the right to do this, right? But that will mean that then you'll have places like Illinois and Colorado and California and whatnot. So it's pretty tough, honestly. You know, it's a rough battle, but I'm sure that as we approach November, we'll find the right strategy for it, right approach to it, and especially how candidates should be talking about this issue. Because for 1 out of 8 voters, this is their top issue, and for women, it is their top issue. 1 out of 8 of them. So,
and it's never going to change.
It's never going to change. That's
so
right.
if you keep being, ambivalent about this or changing your answers depending on what the political climate is, then you're going to be known as a person who just goes along with whatever is, whatever popular opinion is, even though popular opinion can be either falsified or misinformed or just straight up wrong.
Yeah, I agree.
Absolutely.
Fellas, let's move on to our last topic of the night. We'll have another topic I think Kev's going to present it real quickly, but we're probably going to dump all of our YouTube for that because we'll get canceled for that.
No, it's okay. Mainly, the CDC says that you can't have a heart attack from the COVID vaccine. Believe what you will, but that's what the CDC says.
I think we're gonna have some follow-up comments with that may get us a little strike on YouTube. But
that's all I'm saying on it. That's all I have to say.
Yeah. So basically, if you want to see this next segment, go on X. It's breakaway_USA. It's very easy to find. We're there and we're on Rumble, but you can find us there.
Exactly. Sorry, I had a little connection issue there, but right before we go to that story, we're going to just wrap it up with this one last story that squatters are taking over homes. And this is happening in my state in such enormous numbers that it's crazy, like massive numbers. But squatters take over Georgia man's home while he was caring for his sick wife. And this is a newly reported story that pretty much everybody was reporting about it. It was on Fox News. It was on all the local news and whatnot. But a Georgia man claims he returned home from caring for his sick wife to find squatters had changed the locks on his home and moved in. And now local laws are blocking him from evicting the alleged freeloader. I'm happy to say that our governor actually stepped in and enforce some sort of laws that makes squatting or squatters, whatever you want to call the activity, a misdemeanor. So now they don't have to actually go back and forth and negotiate everything. But the thing is that if you thought this has just happened like one case or two cases, a New York Post article from 2 months ago literally stated that there were 1,200 of these incidents happening just in Fulton County, which is home to Atlanta, in a matter of a month. And the thing is that they're not just coming into these vacant places and whatnot and breaking in there and living and whatever, sleeping at night. They're selling drugs out of that place. They're prostituting out of that place. They're doing all of these crazy things. Now, here's another factor to consider here. We have a massive influx of illegal immigrants coming through the border. And the Biden administration is pretty much flying them all across the United States. Well, now you have such easy squatter laws, I don't even know what to call it, that essentially all these illegal immigrants can also have housing now. All they have to do is find a vacant home, which they can find, you know what I mean? Your house, for example, and take over it. And all you have to do is be gone for a little bit to the grocery store to take care of a sick one, to visit them at the hospital or something like that. And you'll come home to somebody taking over your house and you won't be able to evict them. And if you're in a blue state, in a blue sanctuary city especially, boy, you're screwed. Fellas, what are y'all's thoughts about this?
When I was living in India a while back, I met this Italian couple, and this is exactly what they did. In England, they would stay in mansions because the people would be gone vacationing for the summer, and that's when they would go in. And once they had the locks changed, it was the exact same situation. And she would tell me that's how we live. We live in these mansions, and once they finally kick us out, we just go to the next one. It's actually really incredible to hear that. We know that communism, as Karl Marx said, can be summed up in a single sentence: the abolition of private property. We know that insurers are leaving states like California in droves because the amount of crime and apparently climate change. We know that this is done so that it's scary to have property. If you can't insure a home and you can't even have a home that's yours, but you still have to pay taxes on it, but someone can come and take it. Why would you buy a bunch of personal property if you know you can't insure it and it can be taken from you? So this is all done, I believe, to get people to stop buying things so that they can rent everything to you. As the World Economic Forum says, you will own nothing and be happy.
Exactly. A lot of it is to be dependent on someone else, specifically the government is really what it is. But I also want to point out, because like I agree with everything Fabian just said, but to be a little bit comedic about it, can we point out how these homeless people were able to afford U-Hauls and to change the locks? And like I got to admit, like there's a certain level of impressed that I am with like how they were able to steal these houses from these people. Like
Kevin, not just steal them and rent U-Hauls, but they've also generated a new business by selling drugs
income.
and
Like
girls.
I feel like it's a little sad to me that their genius is being wasted on being lazy, because had their genius been put to good use, maybe we could have had like a cure for cancer or something. I don't know. Like
I know you guys probably didn't have much of this on your 2024 bingo cards, but here's another thing that I'm sure that you didn't have on that card is that the Democrat senator out of Pennsylvania, our favorite one, Fetterman, who just surprised everybody in the last, I don't know, half a year or so, he actually gave an interview about this whole thing. And he said that squatters have no rights. And then he said, how can you even pretend that this is anything other than you just breaking the law? And then he just follows that up by saying, I am not woke. And I'm just like, I had to like scratch my eyes. I'm like, is this really John Fetterman saying this? I mean, even he understands how ridiculous this is.
Yeah, Fetterman is, I swear, this is like Vince McMahon's last coup de grace before he has to resign forever. This is his last storyline, his last gimmick. This doesn't make any sense of this this entire Fetterman thing. I was so against him. Like, this guy's an idiot. Especially, against Dr. Oz and all that, and he won, and I get it. And then he had like a stroke, and then he went away and he couldn't talk anymore. And then he's like, came back and he's all like anti-woke and he's carrying like Israeli flags just to troll people. Like, none of it makes any sense. And I mean, this is at the top levels of government. So what in the hell is really going on with Fetterman? I don't know. It's comedic to watch. I'm glad he's becoming non-woke.
Now.
Jeez, that whole situation is just weird.
It sure is. And it's that's why I had to take a sip of my freedom water. Thank you again, freedom water. But great story. Just to wrap things up, we're going to have an extra exclusive segment just on Rumble and Twitter. So make sure that you head on over there. But Kev left us. I was going to say, Kev, any last thoughts about this? But while we get everything situated and figured out, just some housekeeping stuff is that we are wrapping up with the week. So we'll see you next week already for Monday night stream, 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 Pacific. Me and Fabian might have some interesting guests. You don't want to miss our Monday night streams. We kind of get you ready for the week ahead of you. We have investigations with Fabian and Bree Thursday, 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. And then we'll be right back again with it for our Thursday night home team stream, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Guys, the best thing that you can do, first of all, I appreciate all of you guys watching this. It really means a lot. It really, really does mean a lot. But please share this with all your friends. Retweet this as the most simple thing that you can do, or share this on your story or whatever it is, because we want to get as many people seeing this show as possible, because I think that we deliver a lot of underreported news, as well as give you very objective perspectives on everything, plus some hilarious commentary. And Fabian,
Absolutely.
Discord group. What about our Discord group?
Yeah, so for those who prefer audio or podcast, we have those available. Just simply search Breakaway USA on your favorite podcast platform. And very important, join our uncensored Telegram news group to stay informed on news and topics that we can't cover anywhere else due to censorship. That's t.me/Breakaway USA. We also want to take a moment to thank our sponsors, Freedom to O and the Wellness Company, for the support in bringing you today's podcast. Stay informed, stay connected.
Absolutely. And even with that, if you guys noticed, I was gone for like 30 seconds to a minute. It's because I'm still trying to invest more in my internet. And so if you support people like the Wellness Company, the Freedom 2.0, and all of our sponsors, then you will help me make sure that I can stay on for a full live stream without any technical difficulties. So thank you so much for all of that. Are we getting to our next
we're gonna take a quick short little commercial break. We're gonna dump YouTube away. We're gonna be just on Rumble and Twitter so we can be as uncensored as possible.
Oh
so
yeah, the gloves are coming off. Not the OJ glove. The other glove.
By the way, I'm keeping my YouTube on because I want to see if I get actually censored because I don't have any strikes yet. So we're gonna see.
Interesting. Very brave of you. But
oh yes.
All right, let's head on to a little quick commercial break, and then we'll get into our exclusive segment.
All right.
Okay. So are we talking about it? The CDC. The CDC.
Wait.
Everybody?
Let me.
I got it. I dumped it.
You dumped both the YouTubes?
Yeah, all the YouTubes.
Okay.
We are exclusively on Rumble and Twitter now.
All right, Kevin, go off.
Well, it's simple, everybody. The CDC now says that, the COVID vaccine doesn't really cause any type of heart issue, arrhythmia, or any type of issue, despite the World Health Organization, the CDC, prior many other studies showing that the COVID vaccine in some way does increase risk of heart issues. Now, all of a sudden, no, not anymore. Why is this? Why now? Why ever? Why?
Well, just like we see it right here, it's misinformation. So, Kev, what's going on? I'm kidding. Listen. It's pretty damn obvious that the uptakes that we're seeing worldwide from these myocarditis and these certain illnesses and stuff like that aren't just coming out of nowhere. Now, I guess some people have made a good point. Some professors, doctors, and whatnot made a good point that perhaps it's the fact that you didn't go anywhere during COVID. You probably started to drink more. You started to eat more unhealthy foods and whatnot. But why did they never consider the other factor, which is the vaccines? I don't know, guys. I mean, what do you think?
I like how Jordan Peterson put this, and he put it very similar to what you said, David, when he was, and they call it a debate, but it wasn't really a debate, when he was talking with that Destiny guy.
Yep.
Because I don't know if you've seen it, but it looked like a father scolding his child, and the child would just sit there and then talk about something completely different once the father was done with the scolding, or the lesson teaching. But yeah, all this stuff is coming out. Everyone kind of knows, even if they don't want to believe it. There's more and more information coming out every single day. There are so many more turbo cancers that you hear about in the news and everywhere else. And like I said, sure, some of that could be attributed to eating more Taco Bell during COVID, but that was 4 years ago. I mean, are you still eating that bad? Like, what's going on? And I've had people that I know pass away from random stuff, super young, that I don't think they would have gotten otherwise. So I think that if you did get vaxxed, you hopefully live a very healthy lifestyle and you eat very good, and you take things like the Wellness Company Spike Support, which is a concoction that essentially diminishes the amount of spike proteins that you're still producing, because there's long COVID stuff, the brain fog, the inability to, feel like yourself. All this is long COVID. It's inflammation. It's spike proteins that are being produced, even though you got your vaccine a long time ago. And the Wellness Company has this incredible thing called Spike Support. So I want to plug them because they are our sponsor. But if you took the vaccine, you should definitely look into getting it. I think it's like $60. But then it stops your body from producing these inflammatory spike proteins.
Well, and you get it on a discount through us. But when it comes to all of that as well, is the CDC correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. I will apologize for it, but I believe that within the last year, the CDC also released a study that said that you are at risk for potential heart issues if you took the COVID vaccine. So all I see here is that they're releasing a different study through the CDC and that the media is playing off of it to try to, quote, as MSDNC would say, combat misinformation. That's all they're trying to do here. That's what's going on. And that's why it's trending on X, is because it's not actually about providing you with information. It's about providing you with propaganda.
Well, 1984 classic right there. You know, you got the Ministry of Truth pumping out studies for you that, you know, say that what you believe in is not really it. You have to believe us. And that's why I'm really skeptical. For example, with the topic of climate change and whatnot, anytime I see a federal government funded study, I right away throw it out. Why am I going to believe it's pretty clear that the federal government has an agenda. And the way you accomplish that agenda is by using certain tools such as science. And the best way to corrupt science and to use it for your advantage and to be very effective with its manipulation is by using these data studies essentially to say, hey, look, this is what it's really like. So I'm very skeptical every time I see something funded by the federal government. I mean, just show me a freaking study that is not somehow attached to the federal government or big pharma or something environmentally related if we're talking about climate change.
Yeah, it's hard to find one, and that's what sucks is, the trust that the government has, the trust that we may have given them without that being warranted, but still had it, because I think people actually thought that government actually did stuff for them back in the day. That's really no longer the case, where no one believes anything coming out of the government. Case in point, we got a video fact check the other day, Brown and I, about cloud seeding, even though we were reading directly off the government's website. And a lot of people said the fact that you guys got fact checked literally makes me believe it now. So it's almost becoming a badge of honor when the government tries to shut you down and come after you, because people understand what the game is.
It's exactly it. And I'll just repeat it again, that anything coming from the government treated with a bunch of skepticism, because it deserves it, honestly. Especially, I mean, like the way this entire circle works is that if you're a scientist and you're studying something, you most likely need money to study that. You need grants. Well, the only way that you're going to get grants from the federal government or any money from the federal government is if you're going to propagate whatever propaganda they want you to say. And if you don't, then guess what? You don't get your money. And that's how we get stuck in this endless cycle of where everything is federally funded. Like you said, Fabian, you can't really find any not federally funded study about climate change. Why? Because in order to study that, it costs a lot of money. Well, who's going to give you this money? Who's going to subsidize your studying? It's going to be the federal government, who's going to make sure that when you drill into the into the earth, that you're going to come out and say, yes, humans are the reason why the climate is changing.
Yeah. I just did a round of speaking of that, actually, I just did a round of fenbendazole, which is a dog dewormer that's been around since 1974. Very similar to ivermectin, which is a horse dewormer that has all these anti-cancer properties that they're now starting to research. But there's not a lot of research done on a medicine like this, and it's because there's no pharmaceutical company that's trying to make money off it. It's been out since 1974. Yeah. It's incredibly cheap to produce. You can get a pack for like $17 that lasts you quite a long time. Why would a pharmaceutical company spend all this money to do a study if it wasn't to prove that whatever that they concocted was suitable, quote unquote, for humans? It just doesn't happen. So you have all these medications that they're finding out that are working, but no one to fund the studies to do so.
Absolutely. Kev. Well, that's the thing is they'll always try to frame things like ivermectin. They'll be like, oh my God, it's horse dewormer. That's what got Joe Rogan canceled for a brief moment. until everybody realized that Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Greer, all of them haven't been relevant since the 1970s. But they'll try to frame it as that because, well, that's an animal thing. It's an animal thing. But when it comes to actually solving human problems, they don't want to. Why does Big Pharma, why do the people that are supposed to like provide cures, why do they not want to actually solve the issue and actually cure people? Why not?
Yep. I should pull up this here.
Inconvenient.
Yeah. It doesn't make them money. It doesn't make them money, everybody. That's why.
That's exactly why. Yeah, so on the screen, this is from the National Institute of Health, which is a pretty well-trusted journal. Anti-cancer effects of fenbendazole on resistant colorectal cancer cells. And you're starting to see all of this, all of these studies being done and all of these tests and things like that. And it's pretty incredible to see this happening because it proves that, again, fenbendazole and ivermectin, very similar, one's for dogs, one's for horses. They're both dewormers, meaning parasites. And what's interesting is that every animal gets dewormed, but not humans. And it's pretty interesting. Why not? Like, what's the reason? It just doesn't make any sense. So there's a lot of things coming out now that I think is going to really change the shape of healthcare in the very near future. So I'm excited to see what happens.
Absolutely.
Fabian, I think that's actually a great question for Dr. Peter McCullough, honestly.
Who we will hopefully have on soon.
Right. And I feel like he could really go down deep into the science of it, because that's actually a very interesting question of why do animals, pets especially, get dewormed, but us as humans don't necessarily.
Well, to go deeper, and guys, we're not on YouTube, so I can say this without getting strikes, but there's a growing body of work that is saying that cancer, at least some cancers, are parasitic in nature, and how cancer cells they multiply and you can't stop it. That's parasites and bacteria that do the exact same thing. So unabated parasitic growing, parasites growing in your body inside your cells has the same effect as cancer cells multiplying. So, is it that simple? Probably not. But it's probably somewhere in the middle. So it's interesting to see all of this information coming out now that X is allowing it not to be censored, and people can talk and get things across from each other, try different remedies, and say, look, this is exactly what worked. So
yeah, the free flow of information is such a key component to all of this, because we saw that article, and without Twitter probably being able to being a space where we can actually talk about that article, we wouldn't actually be able to to discuss these things and to get this rhetoric out there and this discourse over these things that they're doing. So really thankful for it.
Yep, exactly. I think it's been an incredible chat that we've had today. And again, I want to thank our sponsors, Freedom 2.0 and the Wellness Company, for allowing us and helping us bringing you all this stuff here. And I did want to say that stories like this that we're talking about, with that we had to remove ourselves from YouTube and Instagram. This is why we have the Telegram group, because of exactly this reason. We want to make sure that you're able to get the news out without any algorithm deciding what you're able to see. You're a full-grown adult person. You might be a little baby listening. If you're a baby, you're cool too, man. But we want to make sure that you get in that uncensored news group so that you can always make sure that you know what's happening without having to go through this algorithm and stuff. So make sure that you add us on Telegram, because trust me, what you're going to get out of it is a lot of edification.
100%. Follow us everywhere. Follow us Rumble, Twitter. Those are the two main places where we can freely speak everything we want to. So I had an incredible night with you fellas. It's always such a pleasure to discuss all of these things, to analyze them, to commentate about them, and interesting perspectives as well, perspectives that get me thinking, which is what I love to do. So I believe that's it for our Thursday night. It was with an exclusive segment, and if you guys like that, let us know in the comments. We'll definitely be doing more of those. With that, I'm signing off. I think Breakaway is signing off. Good night, fellas.
Have a good one.